for political correctness, you've come to the wrong place. It's Speak Out Long Island with Steve Levy, 103.9 LI News Radio.
Hey, welcome back to the show, folks. Boy, if you heard that little segue into our show where it says if you're looking for political correctness, you've come to the wrong place, that is so true, especially if you were listening to our last two segments on everything from how to get people out of poverty to racial comments that were allegedly made by Mark Cuban, which I don't think they were racial at all, to the culture war that we have going on in this world. But now we're going to segue to some state and local politics. We'll throw in some national as well, but we've got two heavyweights in our studio here, both men in our studio, the two Davids. Very pleased for the first time to have on our show former Nassau County Legislator David Mejias, who is now one of the top-notch legal counsel in all of Nassau County. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Welcome. I'm glad to be here.
Dave, you actually voted by was it Long Island Business, though, Long Island Press, like one of the top matrimonial lawyers?
Long Island. My partner was the Long Island Press's best divorce lawyer on Long Island, Randy Milgram, and I was voted by the Long Island Pulse readers as the best divorce lawyer on Long Island also.
That's awesome. And, whenever we see each other, we give a little smile, say, life in the private sector is not half bad.
Oh, it's great. If I wasn't here, I'd probably be on the beach somewhere. And I always think to myself, I love Suffolk County. I go out to Amagansett for August, and I keep thinking, when I'm on the beach there on a Saturday, I'm not doing an Eagle Scout in the basement of the Farmingdale Public Library. So private sector is pretty good.
It is. And, hey, kudos to Suffolk County government, to my predecessors. I'll take a little credit myself. The county legislature, we preserved a lot of beautiful open spaces in this awesome county. And David Zere, I'm not going to call you a mogul, but he's a big-time real estate player here on Long Island from Zere Commercial Realty. Welcome to the show for the first time, Dave.
Thank you, Steve, very much.
I should say to the folks out there, the reason I asked David to be on the show, David Zere, my Center for Cost-Effective Government sponsored a meeting a couple of weeks ago at the Marriott in Melville along with the Long Islanders for Education Reform. And that was the group that helped bring us the tax cap. And we were promoting mandate relief in New York State because it is, the Tri-Borough Amendment that continues to give step increases even after municipal contracts expire. That's killing us. Mandatory arbitration that has given us police officers making $227,000 in a few years. That's killing us. Public pensions, which are so different than the private sector, are killing us. And we had a forum to say, what could we do about this? Half of the audience was stacked with teachers union. And we're going back and forth, and it was a great debate. And, people got heated. But it was, there were no fist flying, so that was a good thing. But David was one of those private sector guys who spoke with a great deal of passion and emotion. That, David, you got to come on the show and give that perspective. And, I want to balance it out by having an articulate guy who's been in the trenches, and Dave Mejias. So let's talk about this with our schools and the tax cap. I'm a believer in it, Dave Mejias. I think it's worked. I always believe that people go into government and they spend too much money, and you need some kind of cap to force prioritization. And, what's your thoughts? The unions hated it, but I think
schools aren't spending money. The government is spending money. It's Albany. It's the state. It's the federal government with these unfunded mandates that require green cleaning products, sensors on gym doors, the testing, everything you can possibly think of.
Be careful. You're sounding like a Republican now.
But,
go ahead.
Well, I'm clearly not. But, I own two properties. I pay $40,000 a year in school taxes. I don't have any kids. And most of that is really these unfunded mandates. We send $4 to $5 billion a year to Albany that we never get back. We send another $5 billion to Washington we never get back. The total for all the school districts on Long Island is $4.5 billion. So we wouldn't have any school tax if we just got our money back. And that's the biggest thing. We're fighting with each other on these small issues like the superintendent salaries. I'm in Farmingdale. The superintendents make altogether less than $1 million in a $160 million budget. And that's what everybody's upset about. The assessment system, which is broken clearly, but people are fighting, and they're taking their eye off the ball. These guys in Albany are passing these laws, making the school districts spend money that they don't give them money for. And then going back to their districts and taking all this credit for passing these nice laws that feel good for everybody, and the taxpayers are the ones that are footing the bill.
Well, I'm in agreement with you there. I think we're all in agreement that the mandates are out of control. But the point I make with the Center for Cost-Effective Government is you have to follow the trail, and that it's the mandates on the local government that requires them to spend so much money on personnel, because that is 70% of any budget. It's pretty much personnel. I agree with you, Dave.
Testing.
Yes, that's testing too. But I think there is too much emphasis on the superintendent. It galls you when you see a $400,000 salary, but that's one guy, maybe 2 or 3 people. It's the mere volume of the number of people who are making, maybe not 400,000, but 125, 135. And at what point do we say, hey, we've got to curb this? And the Triborough Amendment is one of those mandates that says the contract expired, and now we're going to continue to pay that anyway. So, Dave Zere, have we come to the point now where we have to end the Triborough Amendment?
Well,
and what
listen,
do we do here?
Steve, you know, public employees, including their benefits, make double what the private sector makes right now. It's out of control. It's got to stop. It takes $2 million in cash to fund an $80,000 a year pension. I'm not anti-teacher. My wife's a teacher. I think they're great. But remember, the private sector made Long Island school systems great. Guys like Leroy Grumming taking risks out of his garage in Baldwin and building private sector businesses on Long Island. That's why we have the communities that we have. And it's out of control. It's a runaway train. And I really love Assemblyman Mike Fitzpatrick to try to incorporate some pension reform. There's no reason the teacher should get automatic pension increases even if the stock market goes down. We have to change it. I'm in private business. My business is down 67%. We are getting slaughtered, and we can't go the way we're going.
I'm a divorce lawyer. Business is through the roof.
But, you know, civil service used to be done out of a sense of duty, and now they used to get lower pay and great benefits. Now they have both. Forbes magazine just said that the public sector, including teachers, firemen, and cops and federal workers, are the fastest growing sector of millionaires in the United States. San Bernardino County went bankrupt. 81% of their budget was going to public employees. It's out of control. It's got to stop.
Let me segue and ask Dave Mejias a question on this, because we started to talk about pensions at this meeting, and a lot of the signs from the teachers said, keep your hands off my pension. And, you know, one thing that E.J. McMahon said, who was one of the panelists from the Empire Center for New York State Policy, more fiscally conservative entity there, he said, listen, Detroit had a guarantee for their pensions too, but now that they're going into bankruptcy, those folks aren't going to have a guaranteed pension because they killed the goose that laid the golden egg. Are we at the point now, Dave Mejias, that we're killing the goose that laid the golden egg, and something has to happen to get control over the salaries, over the cost of our police departments, of our schools, and our other governments here on Long Island?
Well, I think the pension system is fundamentally flawed in that it took into account the life expectancy in 1950. You know, and every year, life expectancy is going up by more than a year every year, which theoretically means we could live forever, but who wants to do that? Because I don't want to pay taxes forever. But the reality is that we have to first start with the age of retirement and maybe increasing the age of retirement, maybe a little bit, giving back a little bit to the pension system out of their salaries. But at the same time, you have in Farmingdale, you have to be a teacher for 25 years before you hit top salary of $109,000. Now, can you live on Long Island for $109,000 a year? That being said,
a lot of people do.
They do, but
and they struggle. But a lot of people live on Long Island for $75,000.
Let's not forget you're in real estate, Dave. What's the primary driver of what your house is worth? Okay, if you live in Oyster Bay, there's a big difference
Sales
between.
Are down 19% in Nassau County year to year. They're down 9% in Suffolk, and property taxes are
but
the
not in
biggest
Cold Spring
killer.
Harbor, not in Jericho,
You know
not
what?
in
I'm
Manhasset,
building
not in
houses
Great
in
Neck,
Huntington.
where the school districts are incredible. The market's up. So if you go to Oyster Bay, you look at a house on one side of the street, that's the Oyster Bay School District. The other side of the street is Cold Spring Harbor. The house that's in the Cold Spring Harbor School District is worth a lot more money than the one in Oyster
We're
Bay.
building houses in Dix Hills. We're going to get slammed for $40,000 a year in taxes on these houses. What kind of legacy is that to pass on to your children? It's got to stop. 60, 70% of your tax bills going to the state education. It's crazy.
I agree with you.
Let me just, you're listening, folks, to Speak Out Long Island with Steve Levy, and our guests are David Zere, who you just heard, a real estate bigwig out here on Long Island, and Dave Mejias, a former Nassau County legislator. You're welcome to join in the conversation, or the debate, if you want to call it that, at 451-1039.
Why don't we just get rid of the school tax and make it an income tax?
You know,
right?
I've heard that said many times before. You know what my fear would be? I mean, if we were starting from scratch, I would say that's the better way to go, making an income tax. But we're not starting from scratch. You got the income, the property tax, which, by the way, you can't pay for your taxes to the equity in your home. You might have a high-valued home, but doesn't mean you have the cash to pay it. But what I see would happen if we tried to go with an income tax, I know what they would do. They would say, okay, we're going to just take a little bit of income tax, and then you're going to still have the property tax, and then they're going to start inching up that local income tax higher and higher and higher. So in a perfect world, I would have said, yeah, let's go with the income tax. At this point, people buy their homes knowing what they're paying. You start rocking that boat and changing the apple cup, would there be an explosion, people going crazy?
The problem that you have is like the Plain Edge School District is primarily driven by residential property taxes. There's no commercial tax base. Great Neck, look at the great school districts. Manhasset, Jericho, Syosset, Great Neck. There are large commercial tax bases there that do well for the residents.
But remember,
that's the real problem.
There's a myth out there that the lower performing districts, Roosevelt, Hempstead, that they spend less per child than Garden City does. That's not true. The fact is, Brentwood, Sachem, they're all spending $18,000 per student, $22,000.
Steve, if I could add,
but let me just finish, David.
Sure.
Money's coming from state aid for those lower wealth districts that help make it up, and property taxes are very high. But the point is, the more money does not equate to better performance.
Because I sent 3 of my 4 children to Catholic school for $7,000 a year, and they got Ivy League quality educations. It's ridiculous. Listen, I'm not entitled to anything. If I have a heart attack and drop dead on the floor right now, I'm not entitled for an ambulance to come get me. It's a privilege in society. We've crossed the line. We're abusing it right now. And I pay $30,000 a year for my health insurance premium with a $10,000 deductible. These people have to realize in the public sector that I'm all for the public sector. I deal with government at every level every day. But I'm out there trying to run a business, and we're getting hammered between the capital gains going from 15 to 20%, another 3.8% Obamacare investment tax on the capital gains. It's not sustainable. It can't go forward this way. So I'm here to help change it. But you know what? These people in the public sector have to become more realistic. There's no reason why a public employee is making $584,000 a year in Nassau County. There's no reason a superintendent's making $600,000 in some Nassau County school districts.
Well, let me segue to Dave Mejias, and then I want to get into another public sector area, which is the Long Island Railroad negotiation. Any final words on the schools, Dave Mejias?
Well, there's a difference between what you spend per pupil and your property taxes. I mean, Hempstead, Roosevelt don't have a big tax base. Hempstead's got one of the largest populations of not-for-profits on their tax rolls who don't pay any real estate taxes whatsoever. That's why they're promoting a big $2 billion project there to increase the tax base. The other thing is, you have this NIMBYism on Long Island. You want to pay less property taxes? Develop some property. You have neighbors going.
Well, you're not going to get an argument from Dave Zere, the commercial real estate guy.
We're completely on board with that. There's a big fight in Glen Cove on developing the waterfront for the last 10 years. My taxes on my law office in Glen Cove have gone from $24,000 in 2006 to $46,000 today. I am for every single piece of development that you could possibly have. Bring people to your downtown. Bring people into Glen Cove, and my building, and my property was nothing before. Now we have 22 employees that are there between the medical office and myself. We're bringing people into the city.
And it's great, but the small guys can't take the risks anymore. It used to be you can be a landscaper and go buy a truck and get a loan. You can't get a loan anymore because of the Dodd-Frank Act. There's another 150 regulations coming down the pipe.
You can't get a loan anymore because the bank screwed up the entire system.
No, because the Dodd-Frank legislation that the Democrats passed in Congress, along with the capital gains increase, is stifling growth. I see it every day. My customers can't get loans. They can't stay in business. The small guy can't grow his business. Ayn Rand said in Atlas Shrugged in 1957, when the prime movers of society are enslaved, it's going to collapse. We're the risk takers. We're the people who make things happen in society. And the public sector people are benefactors of that private revenue. When taxes are reduced, revenue triples to the IRS. It's got to change.
Taxes are reduced for who, though? Because listen, I will admit that I make a lot of money, especially now that I'm out of government. And I have the time to actually.
I'm getting my ass kicked.
But I get a lot of write-offs. Most people that own their own businesses or work for a big company make a lot of money. They live their life as a tax-deductible event. Their car's paid for by the business. Their cell phone, their health insurance.
That's not true. You know what?
Absolutely. You know what? Why don't we get rid of all the write-offs? Have a flat tax.
Well, you sound like Steve Forbes, a Republican again now.
Well, I just think that really wealthy people get a lot of tax write-offs that they should not get.
Listen,
at all.
wealthy people are not reinvesting in the infrastructure in the United States because they don't know what the tax consequences are moving ahead, and they're scared to death by the additional regulations coming down from Obamacare.
I agree with you. We should have spent the $700 billion that we bailed out Wall Street with and built railroads and an electrical grid system and universal internet for people in schools and hospitals instead of bailing out a few rich guys.
There wasn't one shovel-ready project that was funded out of that $700 billion.
It is funny.
Right.
Let me interject you two guys a second. I'm almost foolish for doing so because you guys are very entertaining going at it. But I was county exec at the time of that collapse, and I remember saying the same thing. You know, I think it is good to prime the pump to get the money out there to build the things we need to build anyway. But the environmental regulations, the hoops you had to jump through, it took so long. It was so ridiculous.
It takes me 20 years to get a project approved, Steve.
And I say today that
There's no argument there's no argument for me. That's ridiculous.
If we had to build a transcontinental railroad today, we would not be able to do it because of all the snail darters and the piping plovers and everything in between.
Well, you got the health commission, you got the fire marshal, you got zoning. There's all these different agencies that you have to go to. There's no one place where you can go to and click a button and say, what do I need to do on the business?
And Long Island has 117 different municipalities and 987 separate taxing districts. I deal with all the planning boards, all the zoning places. I love these people. You know what? But it's very difficult. And only the guys with big money can get involved in the game right now. The small people who want to grow to become bigger businesses later have to go to North Dakota where there's 0% unemployment, or a red state where there's no unions running the show.
And the guys with big money aren't just funding lawyers and engineers for their projects. They're funding the politicians who are appointing the planning board and the zoning board.
And they're still taking 10, 15 years to get their approvals.
And
it's nuts.
It's absolutely
ridiculous.
ridiculous.
But we are all agreeing, though, that...
I'm agreeing with Steve Levy right now. It's like,
that's because I have the off button. That's the only reason.
There's something going... There's a cat outside dancing with a dog.
We even agree on a lot, David, I'm sure.
But, you know, and folks, you're listening to Speak Out Long Island with Steve Levy here on LI News Radio 103.9. Call in at 451-1039. Let's segue here. The Long Island Railroad, where Long Island is. These poor people who get on that railroad every day and go into the city to work for a living, working their tails off, they're paying $250 a month and more, $280 a month. They're going to see it go up again if the Obama administration has its way and forces the MTA management to give a 17% wage increase to the employees who are threatening the strike over 6 years, this is, okay, despite the fact that the subway workers took far less. Now, the MTA management has said, look, we'll give you 11% over the 6 years. The union says, no, we want more. And what does the Obama appointees do? They side with the union, yeah, almost 3% here. Who's getting 3% in the private sector? And on top of that, this is the same union, the same group of workers who had this unprecedented scandal where $1 billion was thrown down the rat hole by all of these people claiming to be disabled when they were not. You would think if there was ever a time on earth to get givebacks, it was now. Not one single giveback was recommended by that board. Instead, they called for a 3% increase per year. And the riders are going to take it on the chin. Taxpayers are going to take it on the chin because we still have that darn MTA tax. We got to fight this. Am I wrong on this, Dave Mejias? Come on.
Well, it depends on how it's going to impact the overall rider and ridership. You know, I'm sure most people cannot afford an increase at all. The reality is that we need a rail system. We need people to go into the city. We need, you know, and the subway. You mentioned the subways before we went out. You were talking about the arbitration process. Don't forget that the subway unions went through an arbitration process with a particular arbitrator who did a pretty good job bringing everybody together to hash out a deal. Now, what people don't understand when they say 17% over a few years, they don't understand that they're also getting step increases every year. So even if there's 0%, they still get a raise every year.
Good point.
So people need to understand that as well. So I'm not in favor of a huge benefit for these public workers. But one thing that's got to be absolutely tied to this is pension reform. You know, these guys, 90% of these railroad workers are going out on a disability pension, and it's a system that's completely corrupt.
Well, we're in agreement there.
Well, I got to tell
Zere?
you, the MTA is one of 800 public-private authorities in New York State that should be able to open their books for public review. And until they do that, I don't think we'll ever get to the bottom of it. And like 1 in 4, 1 in 5 MTA employees make over $100,000 a year. Listen, the MTA guys are great. The guys who fix the tracks out there in the winter, they do work hard. But I know a lot of guys who have 400, 500, 600,000 in the bank at 39 years old. So it's got to change.
Okay. We have a caller calling in. We're having a little technical difficulty where I don't see the name, but it's Keith. Keith, welcome to the show. Keith, are you with us, Keith?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Welcome to the show. We got about 2 minutes left in this session. Keith, roll on it. What's your point?
I just want to make a comment. You know, for 5 years I couldn't get insurance because I had diabetes. And let me tell you something. Obamacare is the best thing to have for my family. I work hard. I worked my whole life.
Absolutely.
Got grandkids.
I'm paying for it.
What's that?
I'm paying for it.
That's David Zere, commercial real.
Two out of my taxes. But you know what? These insurance companies wouldn't even call me back or gave me astronomical price with no coverage.
It's a great point. You know, the irony is that the far-right wing is so against Obamacare, which is a plan that was actually developed by the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank.
You're misconstruing the origin of it.
And I'm saving $300 a month.
Yeah, you're saving $300 a month. Mine went to $30,000 a year because I'm in small business and we're all getting killed. And 6 million small business people lost their insurance, had to re-sign up again on the stupid exchanges that don't work in 10 states.
Hey, Keith, while we got Keith here, Keith, what's your line of business?
I do solar.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you're a solar practitioner?
Yeah, I'm a solar PV design tech.
Okay,
Let me tell you, it's as busy as it's ever been.
All of my doctors don't take Obamacare right now.
They don't have a choice.
It's the biggest tax on business in U.S. history.
Well, you know, Keith is one of those. I mean, we have 40 million people uninsured in this nation, and certainly something has to happen to cover them because if Keith gets injured, breaks his leg, or he goes to the emergency room, and we pay for that anyway. The question is the plan that was developed by President Obama the way to go, or is there another way to go? Keith, we ran out of time for this session. We'd love to have you hold or call back in about 10 minutes. We can continue this dialogue. But we're here with David Zere from Zere Realty on the right, David Mejias, former legislator over in Nassau County, former Democrat on the left, still a Democrat, I say. You're listening to Speak Out Long Island with Steve Levy, 451-1039. Call us in the next segment. You know what that music means.
Billy Squire.
Was that Billy Squire? I didn't know that. I was wondering what the lead-in was to that.
He showed a stroke, man.
I was going to ask for AC/DC or something, but that was cool. Well, folks, you're listening to Speak Out Long Island with Steve Levy. This is former Suffolk County Executive Steve Levy. Welcome to the last segment of our show. It's a live call-in. You can chime in at 631-451-1039. Our guest today, to the right, and sitting at my right, actually, in our studio in MacArthur Airport, is David Zere from Zere Commercial Realty. And to my left, literally and every other way, is David Mejias, former Nassau County legislator and presently vice chair of the Nassau County Democrats. So, welcome. David Mejias, you were at the Democratic Convention, the state Democratic Convention, where Governor Cuomo was renominated this past week in Melville. And there was a big to-do as to whether there were going to be protests, whether the convention was going to be united, whether we were going to have the left mad at Cuomo for various reasons. The right might be mad, but they're not in that particular convention. From what I heard, it was a pretty smooth convention. Is that what actually happened as an insider? What was the story?
It wasn't really, there wasn't really like a generated a lot of buzz. There wasn't a lot of excitement in the room. It was just a pro forma thing at some point. I think, quite frankly, the best speech I think was Tom DiNapoli, who got a little choked up on stage during his speech. He's a good friend of mine. He's a great public servant. That's the type of guy we need in government. Tom DiNapoli just does the right thing for the people. I think people weren't really too thrilled. There's a lot of people talking under their breath. Not the real progressive wing of the party, the liberal wing, is not too happy with Governor Cuomo.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting because on the one hand, he's got to win the suburbs. And for that, you've got to control property taxes. And that's why I think he came out of the box very strong with the property tax cap. But then he saw... you see Bill de Blasio come up on the left and become a darling of the left wing and the Working Families Party. And Working Families got very upset with the governor on a few things, but he had to reaffirm his liberal bona fides by pushing the gay marriage bill and also the gun control law that was passed in the dark of night. So, but he's still got a lot of the left-wingers really angry because he hasn't done more. So,
this is a great opportunity for him, by the way. He could have created a lot of news and a lot of buzz if he had let the proposition by Jay Jacobs, the Nassau County Democratic chair, get voted on, which is to eliminate the Independence Party from the ticket for
but
any
it's
elected
so
thing.
easy to say, Dave. It's so easy for, someone not on the ballot to say, hey, disregard this line that may get you, 5% of the vote. And everybody thinks, Dave Zere, that Mario, Freudian slip, Andrew Cuomo is going to be a shoo-in. But if Working Families Party decides to teach him a lesson and go with someone else, you've got a horse race, and that independence line can make the difference between victory and defeat. So I don't blame him for
taking it. And Ms.
Hochul,
was back
out of the governor to show him, to make sure he's more liberal.
Which is why you shouldn't be able to run on more than one line.
Right.
Which is why you should only have this. We should join the other 49 states and just run on one line and one line only, and not create those special interests.
I think de Blasio's hurting him. He used to work for the Sandinistas in Nicaragua, so he's a communist.
See, I'll tell you, I think de Blasio might actually be helping Andrew Cuomo in the long run, because de Blasio is so crazy left-wing that if you don't do everything de Blasio does, you come off as being moderate. And to a suburbanite,
and Cuomo's probably
independent,
playing
that's a good
that card
thing.
by choosing Hochul.
Yeah. Well,
Which the lieutenant governor really, let's face it, doesn't really matter, because if it mattered, people would be, the liberal wing of the party would be up in arms because she did not allow, as county clerk, undocumented immigrants to have driver's licenses.
Cuomo's distanced
and she was an
himself
NRA member. Right.
Yeah.
Cuomo's distanced himself a little bit from de Blasio, and he does have some fiscally sound policies. It's on the social stuff. I think he's crazy, but
here's where the lieutenant governor thing is going to be big, and this is what I said in a previous segment here today. And folks, you're listening to Speak Out Long Island with Steve Levy, 451-1039. Diversity. We've got to have a ticket that's either racially diversity, gender diverse, geographically diverse. You had Tom DiNapoli, white male, Eric Schneiderman, white male, Andrew Cuomo, white male. No fault of their own. They were born white males. They ran fair and square and beat the other guys, and they're in there. So now he's got a selection for a lieutenant governor. I knew he wasn't picking white male Steve Ballone. It wasn't going to happen. Yeah. It had to be either African American, Byron Brown in Buffalo, or Kathy Hochul, who's also in the West. And so it made sense to me.
Well, the women's issues I think are going to be big in this election. The social issues and appealing to women, I think, is going to be very big. On the social issues, I think, most of the state agrees with what Governor Cuomo did. As a full-time divorce lawyer, I'm all about gay divorce. So the same-sex marriage bill was the best thing that ever happened, socially and in terms of civil rights. But at the same time, most of the country, even most Republicans, even 50% of Republicans think that you should have same-sex marriage legal.
Okay, but now,
not the
David Zere, okay? Segueing from that, and folks, you're listening to Speak Out Long Island with Steve Levy, 451-1039. Okay, we now have gay marriage. Attitudes are changing. People are becoming more liberal on the subject. So now you have Michael Sam, who is the athlete, the linebacker. Actually, he's the defensive end right now in college with, what was he, SMU? Missouri. Mm-hmm. First openly gay athlete of that caliber. Is he going to get drafted? He gets drafted at the very, very tail end of the draft. And some people said it was because he was gay. I think it was mostly because he underperformed at the at the combine. But beyond that, the camera's on him. He gets drafted. He's happy.
It was staged.
Kisses the boyfriend. Okay. Some people are up in arms. Some say we came a long way. Is that a big deal?
There's going to come a time when it's not.
I don't think it's that big of a deal. I just think it was staged, and they're always looking to get their agenda across. But I don't have a problem with someone being gay. I don't believe in gay marriage recognized by the state, because marriage is supposed to be between a man and a woman by definition. But I believe in
But you're for less government, so it really shouldn't matter. You should want it to be legal.
Let's take it off the table and talk about the stuff that matters.
Quite frankly, I'm surprised that a more cosmopolitan city didn't draft him. He would have been, he would have been a darling with San Francisco,
I'll
L.A.,
tell you
New New
what?
York, it would have been a marketing play.
But they probably didn't want the distraction.
They crucified Tebow for being heterosexual and Christian, so maybe it would be a good match for New York.
I actually didn't think it was staged. It didn't bother me. It's like, hey, if a guy is there, got drafted, he's probably got his girlfriend with him, he gives her a kiss, it wouldn't be a big deal. But you know what did bother me? I'll tell you what bothered me. There was this other athlete, I forgot his name. He puts out a tweet. He's a pro football player. And he says, oh, my God, did you see that, really in a disparaging way? That was disgusting, et cetera, et cetera. I don't necessarily agree. Look, I don't necessarily agree with him that he should have said that. But he did say, and he's got a right to say it, it's America. Next thing you know, this guy is being told by his football team, oh, boy, did you do wrong. You're going to our concentration camp, and you're going to get sensitivity training. Bill Maher.
It's a little extreme. I don't think it's a concentration.
Well, wait a
camp.
minute.
He played for the Dolphins, which had a lot of problems. That team had a lot of problems.
But Dave Mejias, comment on this. Bill Maher, who I think is a real left-wing nutcase sometimes.
Genius.
Sometimes he gets it right. And last night, Bill Maher hit it on the head. He said the first thing that came to his mind, and it was independently the first thing that came to my mind, remember Clockwork Orange? If you saw that movie where they tried to indoctrinate this guy to change his opinions on everything, and they hooked him up to the electrodes, and they kept his eyes open with these devices, and they made him watch stuff, and then they shocked him every time. It was almost that kind of ridiculous stuff. It's like a cultural revolution here.
Anyone's expecting him to change his attitude. I think they're expecting what they want to send a message that it's not really appropriate to use epithets for someone's sexuality, just as it is for gender, just as it is for color.
All right.
We all have prejudices, which is why Mark Cuban admitted his prejudices and he got in trouble for it.
Right, but isn't that going over the line? And how about the guy who owns a company, and it's determined that he gave money to Prop 8 out in California to say that marriage should be between a man and a woman. The guy's forced to resign,
Steve,
David
can I
Zere.
ask you a question?
This is nuts.
Can I ask you a question? He was a big Democratic contributor, the owner of the Clippers. Are all those Democrats, including Obama, going to give the money back that they took from him, too? If you taped every private conversation in this country, nobody would be a CEO anywhere. So I don't agree with his comments. Yeah,
right.
Well, I don't agree with his comments, but...
I'm not even talking about Donald Sterling from the Clippers.
Oh, I thought you were. I'm sorry.
I'm talking about the fellow who owned that high-tech company in California.
Yeah.
He gave money to Prop 8, and he had the same position as President Obama and Hillary Clinton at the time. And now he's being told, you've got to leave. You're gone. This is
the thought police are out.
The
thought police are out, and it goes the other way too.
Well, it's also sound business sense to appeal to a segment of and a demographic that has the highest disposable income as a demographic that you don't really want to upset, and you want them buying your products, and you don't want them boycotting your products because of what your CEO is doing. The gay community has a very high education and net worth and disposable income.
Can I get back to the NBA thing for a second?
Sure.
It really bothers me because like 40% of the NBA players have criminal records, and I think for the NBA to start castigating against this guy and cast aspersion, whatever, and judge this guy, maybe they should look internally first. Same with the NFL. 40% of the NFL has some type of criminal record. So, there are no angels on the other side.
Donald Sterling's not on the court, though. Okay, so these guys are doing their job on the court. What are you going to do? Cut a guy that got arrested for something? Some other teams.
Yeah, but you know what? He didn't break any laws, and he did sign a contract with the NBA, and maybe he should be stripped of his ownership in some way. But I think we got to get that off the table. The real problems are here and now with this economy. I went to Russia when I was 16, and it was communist, and we're heading in that direction. We're in trouble here. And Dan Moynihan said before he died that he helped create the Great Society in funding the welfare state, and that he made a mistake, and he created an intergenerational subdependency on the welfare state and a new species of person. And I think that's the conversation that needs to take place.
Well, that was former Professor and Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan with his benign neglect theories.
But we're going to a welfare state, but yet the stock market is up 130%.
Yeah, that's great. 92 million Americans don't work. 47% of the population stop looking for work.
So, by the way, folks, you're listening to Speak Out Long Island with Steve Levy. You can call in at 451-1039. We're here with David Zere from the right and David Mejias on the left. And we have Keith again who's calling in. So we started a great conversation with Keith in the last session about Obamacare. Let's continue it. Keith, welcome back. Are you with us, Keith? Wait, here we go. Keith, are you with us?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
here.
Welcome back.
I just want to make a comment. This is the best economic upturn I've seen in years.
Yeah, right.
And now, Keith, you were the same Keith from the last session, correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. So, all right. So you're doing better in your business, which is good for you. Fantastic. What do you think about what I was talking about a little earlier and what David Zere is saying? Now David Mejias is saying, hey, things are going well because of the stock market. There's no doubt about that. The stock market is up significantly.
The GDP's up 1% a quarter.
Right.
It's not growing.
But what about my point is this? Now, David Zere said we're heading toward a communist state. I don't go that far, but I think we are heading toward these European nations that...
Yeah, like Germany.
Well, no, I wish we were going like Germany.
going the other way.
Sure you
I
do.
think we're going more toward Greece and Spain, where we're becoming much more of a dependency state, where disability is now 11 million people on disability.
I got to tell you something. I keep hearing about people that are unemployed on the welfare state. You know what the welfare state is? Wall Street. Okay, we give these guys $700 billion. We bail them out.
47 million Americans
what do they
are on
actually?
food
What
stamps.
does Wall Street actually produce? You know
What?
what they do?
Your pensions for your teachers.
Hold on a
87%
second.
of their
You know what they
pension
do?
comes from Wall Street.
They give money to politicians on both sides. They get laws changed. They create loopholes that they can now exploit
Keep
to make
knocking
money.
business.
Okay, so
I
you got
wanna go
mortgage-backed
broke.
securities, you
Since
got
I-
derivatives.
Keep knocking business. You'll
This
never
is
work
great.
for a poor person.
No,
You'll
hold on
never
a second.
work for a poor person.
I own a business. I run a
Now.
business. I
Then how do you
understand
have an
that.
anti-capitalist view?
So what?
Because you're
Wall Street-
comfortable.
Because,
No,
because,
pretty.
because there was a time when you invested in a stock to give a company money so that they could grow their business. Now Wall Street is just about finding a loophole where it's these mortgage-backed securities,
Dave, you can't grow your business.
which crippled
You
the
can't grow
world.
your
Both
business
Daves.
now.
Hold on, Daves. I want to ask Keith something. But before I do, Keith, I want to take this minute as prerogative as the guy who has the show here. I want to tell you all about the story when I was in the state assembly.
Okay.
I was a Democrat in the state assembly.
It's all your fault.
And it is. Back in 2001 through 2003.
You saw the light, though.
And my theory was, hey, I want to have programs for this, that, and the other thing. And, collectively, when we were in the caucus together, we would say, are we going to be able to afford these things? You know what mattered more than anything else? You know what mattered, whether we'd have the money for these programs or not? How much money we were going to get from taxes from people on Wall Street who got bonuses. So for all those previous years, I had decried these bonuses that these guys on Wall Street got. I thought they were greedy, good-for-nothing creeps, okay? Now I realize half of the money that we were getting in our budget in New York State came from 14th Street, Manhattan, and below, where Wall Street was. When things were going bad and they weren't making money, and we couldn't tax them on that money, we had no money to do all those things for the poor, for health care, this and that. When they were doing well and we were able to tax them and get the money, we were flush and we were able to do all these good things for people. So don't kill the goose that laid the golden
Steve,
egg.
10% of the income earners in the highest tier pay 70% of the nation's taxes. The bottom 50% pay 4%.
Keith.
So all these rich people are funding all the
There's
rest
also a
of us.
disparity in income. The rich people are making more money. I'm one of them.
So
I'm
what?
proud of it.
What if people are making more money
Doesn't
if
matter how much you
everyone
make
else
on
is
Long
doing
Island.
well?
They're
Keith,
not.
let's hear from our caller. Keith, where do you come down on this? Keith.
Healthcare. What you guys did to the system while you guys were in.
Yeah, I did it.
You tore it up so that anybody that had any sort of problem, even if they worked hard, couldn't get any type of insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah, before, what were you doing? We were paying for all the uninsured people. Now we're requiring people to have insurance. Your health insurance rates were going through the roof because you were paying for people
And
that
they're
didn't have
going up
insurance
even
at all.
more because of government bureaucracy running the doctors' lives.
80% of bankruptcies were tied into to bills, medical bills that people couldn't pay anymore.
Right.
That was the problem. It just makes fundamental
Let's see
sense.
when
We
you're
require
70.
everybody to have car
Let's see
insurance.
when you're 70 and you need a kidney transplant.
We-
Hold on. Let me hear one more word from Keith, then we're going to go back to it. Keith, give me a sign-off message here.
A sign-off message. I am a lot better than when I was in 2008. I could tell you that, and a lot of my friends are.
All right.
It's a big difference, and you're going to see it in the polls again.
All right. Thank you very
with
much.
the health, you require people to have car insurance because there's more people in the pool, which mathematically means it'll be cheaper for
It's a
everybody.
tax just for breathing.
Because you
It's
have
a tax just for breathing. It's the first time in American or Western society people are being taxed and forced to pay for something just for breathing.
and drink,
Well,
and
it's
you're taxed to
outrageous.
drink water too. But it's cheaper now.
Ridiculous.
It's less now than it was before. When you have more people paying for insurance, just as you have with car insurance, then you have fundamentally, mathematically, it's cheaper for everybody. The high-risk people, the not-so high-risk people. When you know, listen, I pay for my employees' health insurance.
How about
I got a 30-year-old attorney who never uses their health
How
insurance.
about interstate competition? How about tort reform? How about interstate competition? How about getting $100 billion in illegal immigration off the medical emergency room system in this country?
So let them buy insurance. Let them get the insurance. Why are you making it illegal for them to get insurance?
Yeah, make them legal. Make them legal so they can go on welfare. I'm going to pay more.
Yeah, but undocumented immigrants on Long Island pay more money in taxes than they take out of the system.
They contribute to the economy.
Absolutely. They absolutely are. And this notion of undocumented immigrants in this country.
They're paying property taxes. They're going to the schools. They're paying property taxes.
Because when your family came to this country, the laws are completely different.
They didn't go on the public system. They worked their asses off, and they learned to speak
undocumented immigrants are not allowed by law to get welfare or
nothing, and they worked their ass off.
The federal law prevents undocumented immigrants from getting any public assistance.
And
the
that's
public assistance,
80% of Social Security.
The largest percentage of public assistance in this country is to white citizens of this country.
Yeah, it's white. It's a white person problem.
Well, no,
it's not.
Wait, hold on. There's no doubt that more white people are on welfare, but that's not the point here.
They're not undocumented, though.
What's that?
There's no undocumented people on
listen,
welfare.
I can tell you, as a former county executive, I can tell you that over 50% of the people who were using our clinics were people who were not here legally. We had over 10% of our jail filled with people who were not here legally. If you look at our schools, a larger and larger proportion are taken up by people who are not here legally.
Let them buy insurance.
Let's just enforce our borders and say you come into the country legally, and if you don't, we don't.
We need immigration reform at every level. 50% of the doctoral PhDs in engineering in this country go overseas.
Not the answer. Thomas Paine said government's the
Thomas Paine was
to
dead
society.
200 years ago.
Yeah, and he was the smartest guy alive.
So is James Madison, but his ideals hold up pretty well.
When 50% of doctoral PhDs in engineering are leaving this country because they cannot stay here legally, that's a problem. We need immigration
I don't think
reform.
anybody.
How about my kids
staying
staying in New York who just got MBAs and make $30,000 a year with MBAs? How about that? We're getting crushed.
Yeah, but you know what? They're making 30 grand working for a company where the CEO's probably making $25 million, that's the problem.
Evil business owners.
You're
like a Marxist. It's crazy.
I am, because when I give $700 billion to a company that's failing and the CEO gets a $50 million bonus, that's a problem. Because the guy in the mailroom is making $30,000 paying his taxes.
Puts it back in the economy.
If you own a business and you're making a lot of money, look in China right now, and this is how we're going to wrap this up. This is how I started off this show, and this is how I'm going to end it. China has more billionaires being created every day now than they could have ever have fathomed back in 1980. But they've had 600 million people lifted out of poverty within the last 30 years because they've opened their markets.
Yeah, and they're making a nickel to 10 cents an hour.
No. Their quality of life is definitely improving. And if you were only making a nickel and you got that extra nickel and it feeds your kids, that's big.
And by the way,
because of capitalism.
We're having you guys back. Dave Mejias, thank you. David Zere, thank you. We're definitely having you back. This was a great show, folks. Join us back next week, Long Island News Radio.